All right, family. All right. Whatever you're saying is being recorded. Yes.
They'll be held against you.
Absolutely. So we start with the bracha.
Yes.
Any volunteers? Come on, guys.
Me again.
No, the one that the old buddy behind you. It's been a while since we've had one of Jolly.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natana Torah. Praise are you, Adonai, our God, King of the universe, who gives the Torah of truth and the good news of salvation to his people Israel and to all the peoples through his Son, Yeshua the Messiah, our Lord. Amen.
All right, you guys had some homework for me. All right. You remember what you were discussing last week? What did we frame?
Troubles.
Mm-hmm.
Troubles and Magog coming down.
We done. Well, this is part of the framework, right? They would look like the Scythians, Russia coming down, right? And we spoke about them. And what was the point of the war? It's plunder, right? So it was about them coming in and taking stuff, holding stock and all that. And we were going to do a parallel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly read through chapter 38. And then I want you to go to Revelations 20. Okay? So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to do a parallel. Chapter 38 in Revelations 20 and chapter 39 is going to seemingly link with Revelations 19. Okay? So we've got two chapters before we start getting into the really complex things of Ezekiel, which is basically 8 chapters of this Ezekiel's temple, which I'm not going to pretend to completely figure out. Lots of different theories, lots of different things, lots of different thoughts. But we'll tackle that as we go. Okay, so just to remind you guys, set you in the framework so that we have something. Chapter Ezekiel 38, verse 1. The word of Adonai came to me, human being, turn your face to Gog in the land of Magog, chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. Remember, we related that back to Genesis 10. Prophesy against him, say that Adonai Elohim says, I'm against you, Gog, chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. I will turn you around, put hooks in your jaws, and bring you out with all your army, horses and horsemen, Syrian talk, all completely equipped, a great horde with breastplates and sword and shields and all wielding swords. Paras, Ethiopia, Put, with them all with breastplates and helmets. Gomer with all its troops, the house of Tagarma, in its far reaches of the north with all its troops. Many peoples are with you. Prepare yourself, get ready, you and all your crowd gathered around to take charge of them. After many days have passed, you will be mustered for service. In later years, you will invade the land which has been brought back from the sword, gathered out of many peoples, the mountains of Israel. They had been lying in ruins for a long time, but now Israel has been extracted from the peoples, and all of them are living there securely. You will come up like a storm, you will be like a cloud covering in the land, you with all your troops and many other peoples with you. Just to give you a quick rundown, when you start looking at some of these names, we did a bit of a trace when we did Revelations. Like I said, the Scythians pointed to Russia. Meshech is the Mushki, otherwise known as Moscow. Tuval, Tabarini, west of the Mushki in the Black Sea. The chief prince or the head prince of Rus, which is the Syrians, again being called out against. His allies will be Persia, which is Iran. Kush, which is a representation, some believe it's Ethiopia, some believe it's just a section of Africa. Put is what they call Arab Africa. So way up north. Gomer is what they call, guys nailed it down to Germany and the Slavic countries. So Germany, Poland, Czechoslovakia, those sort of places. Togarma is Armenia. And if you look at, I think, verse 13, it talks about Sheba, Dedan, and Tarshish, which is basically Saudi Arabia, Sheba and Dedan. And Tarshish comes from Tartarus, which is in Spain. So they might be part of it, they might be possible bystanders. That'll at least give you a modern day sort of feel. We're looking at basically from all different, being hit from all different sides again, right? Where did I stop? Verse 10. Adonai Elohim says, when that day comes, thoughts will well up in your mind and you will devise a sinister scheme. You will say, I'm going to invade this land of unwalled villages. I will take by surprise these people who are at peace, living securely in all the places without walls, bars, or gates. I will seize the spoil and take the plunder. You will attack the former ruins that are now inhabited and come against the people gathered from the nations, who have acquired livestock and other wealth and are living in the central parts of the land. Remember the central parts of the land, if we talk about Megiddo, what did they find in the valley of Megiddo again?
Very fertile
I
plains.
guess.
Not just the fertile plains which were there, but they found an oil reserve, right? Sheba and Dedan are all leading merchants of Tarshish will ask you, have you come to see spoil? Have you assembled your hordes to loot, to carry off silver, gold, livestock, other wealth, to take much plunder? Therefore, human being, prophesy. Tell God that Adonai Elohim says this. Won't you be aware of it when my people Israel are living living securely or living in security? You will choose just that time to come from your place in the far reaches of your north, you and many peoples with you, all of them on horseback, a huge horde, a mighty army. And you will invade my people Israel like a cloud covering in the land. This will be in Acharit Hayamim, and I will bring you against my land, so that the nations will know me when before their eyes I am set apart as holy to you, God. All right, remember when we traced the name God, what did we find? Scripturally?
Back to Genesis 10.
Yeah, there's 1 Chronicles 5 verse 4.
Probably Reubenite.
Right, part of Reubenite, and remember we did a parallel with that Reubenite and
Reuben.
the Reubenites backed who in the rebellion against Moses?
Yeah, from when son of Korah.
It's okay, so Korah and the right would come up. Adonai Elohim says, I spoke of you long ago through my servants, the prophets of Israel. Back then they prophesied for many years that I would have you invade them. When that day comes, when God invades the land of Israel, says Adonai Elohim, my furious anger will boil up. In my jealousy, in my heated fury, I speak. When that day comes, there will be a great earthquake in the land of Israel, so that the fish in the sea, the birds of the air, the wild beasts, and the reptiles creeping in the ground, and every human being there in the land will tremble before me. Mountains will fall, cliffs crumble, and every wall crash to the ground. I will summon a sword against him throughout all my mountains, says Adonai Elohim. Every man will wield his sword against his brother. I will judge him with the plague and with blood. I will cause torrential rainfall to fall on his troops and of many peoples with him, along with huge hailstones, fire, and sulfur. I will show my greatness and holiness, making myself known in the sight of many nations. Then they will know that I am Adonai. I am Hashem. Last little thing, there was a parallel there. Okay, so earthquake, right, happens, and then it goes into the fall or into the judgment when it talks about the birds of the air, the fish in the sea, the birds of the air, the beasts. Remember, that was a creation order. And even the ground itself or nature itself will fight against this God. Hail, fire, which is generally lightning, and sulfur, which is going to remind you of which judgment already? Sodom and Gomorrah. What was Sodom and Gomorrah's greatest crime? in hospitality, right? Remember? Only if you have money can you come in and we will treat you nice. If not, we're going to hurt you and we're going to chase you away. Okay? That's why they were not allowed to sleep in a public square. He wanted them to sleep in their house. That's why when God pushed his daughters out, he said, have them. He knew nothing was going to happen to them because nothing happened to Lot. Lot was welcomed into their community. Right? He was welcomed because he had money. Okay? So he's again alluding us to things here. We've got issues, right? When we see hail and a plague with blood, what does that remind you of? Egypt, so Pesach. So when he's dealing with Pesach, he's dealing with him in judgments. Right? I am God, I have no equal, and I can distinguish between who's the mine and who's not. And he will make, this will make his greatness and his holiness, he will make himself known in the sight of many nations. Right? That he is Hashem. And you're getting to this place now where he's saying, all right, if this is now the same end time Gog and Magog, I'm not disputing that this is going to happen in the end time, I'm just trying to find out when. All right? Fun timeline questions. And when we get into this framework, it is what is God's agenda at the end time? Okay? If we understand our scriptures correctly, we know that his agenda is basically the same as what it was with Pesach. And with Pesach, as we've been studying, is to deal with the Hebrews, is to deal with Egypt, and is to deal with the gods of Egypt, and is to deal with the world and the gods of the world. Right? So if they started trusting in Egypt, and Egypt's powerful because Egypt's gods are the most powerful. That's why Egypt is lifted up, right? If they get judged, can our God stand? No. And we see that pattern in Revelations. Okay? So I want you to jump back with that sort of framework in your mind. Go to Revelations 20. I'm just thinking, should we do it this way? Because context in 19 is going to give us timeline. You know what? Let me do it this way. Let me do it this way. Let's do Ezekiel 39. And then we can do 19 and 20 together and you can see the parallels. Okay, let's do it that way. All right, so back to Ezekiel 39. And then what we can do is we can take a couple of minutes and we can just draw the parallels. All right, so 39 verse 1 says, so you human being prophesy against Gog and say that Adonai Elohim says, I am against you, Gog, chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. Do you guys have any other translation there?
Only wash.
Wash.
But I've got the same music as well.
Okay, wash is what?
It's
The head. Okay, but it could also be wash as in the place, rus.
Why is Messiah also referred to as wash?
As a head, wash, but this also could mean as in rus, as in the place. Okay.
He was called that.
Yeah, he was called the head in many things, as in he's the head of the body. Right. I will turn you around, lead you on, and bring you from far reaches of the north against the mountains of Israel. But then I will knock your bow out of your left hand and make your arrows drop out of your right hand. You will fall on the mountains of Israel. You, your troops, and all the peoples with you. I will give you to be eaten up by all kinds of birds of prey and wild animals. Mark that down because that's going to come in. Okay? So there's going to be a great feast on your carcasses. You're going to die, and the birds of the air are going to eat you. Not something uncommon. Is that an honorable death? Why?
Because no one's buried.
Right. So no one's going to bury you. You're just going to be dead there forever. Okay? You will fall in the open field, for I have spoken, says Adonai Elohim. In the open field, what type of battle? Where do you think this battle is going to be placed? In a place with lots of area and mountains. If this is future, Does it sound like it's going to be fought in Jerusalem itself? No. So it's going to be out probably in the agricultural areas, right? I will also send fire against Magog and against those living securely in the coastlands. Then they will know that I am Hashem. Okay, again, we see that Pesach theme. You will know that I am. I will make my holy name known among the people of Israel. I will not allow my holy name to be profaned any longer. Who's the one profaning his name? Yeah, well, look, when it comes to the end times, remember New Covenant and those things, he says, that's it, I'm done. I sent you guys out there to reflect me. You did a horrible job. Now, for my name's sake, I am going to come and do stuff. Okay? So even in Israel, even in Jerusalem, they're not getting it right. Okay, so if we're waiting for the Jews to reach perfection before Allah comes and sorts everything out, you're going to be surprised when you see him on your doorstep going. Listen, it's not going to be perfect. The main indicator here when the battle is going to take place is that they're going to be so happy, chilling in peace, that they're not even going to be worried about Russia and an alliance all of a sudden. They will get attacked without a warning. Okay? Then the nations will know that I am Hashem, the Holy One of Israel. Yes, this is coming, and it will be done, says Adonai Elohim. This is the day about which I have spoken. Those living in Israel's cities will go out and set fire to the weapons to use as fuel. The shields, the breastplates, the bows, the arrows, the clubs, the spears. They will use them for fire for 7 years. Okay, now let's stop there. Now, modern day warfare. If this has not happened yet, are they going to be fighting with clubs, with shields, with spears? No. What type of things could we use to make fire for 7 years? Okay. Some people believe this could be nuclear, right? Some people believe this is broken stuff that they're going to use to push into furnaces and things like that, and it's going to fuel different fires and different sources. Okay. So that they will know, they will not need to gather wood from the fields or cut down any from the forest, because they will use the weapons for fire. How long are they going to have this fire?
7 years.
7 years. It's a Shemitah cycle. All right? If the land is regrowing, say now if this is a war, what do you think would happen to the fruit trees and those things? How many trees do you think will live, or your vegetation will be around? Do you think it would be a good idea to go and chop down again? Does it talk about electrical issues here? Possibly, right? Because if you're busy using fuel and you're using trees to come in and fuel fires and things like that, maybe they need to, because the electricity or other things are not working. All right, so how are they going to fuel it? How are they going to get everything back going? But if I have to chop down the trees, then we lose food. So in a Shemitah cycle, 7 years, they will be able to get everything, and that will give enough time for the vegetation to come back and regrow and so on. Okay?
That doesn't make sense. Because they won't need to cut down the wood.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. They won't need to, but if they didn't use this stuff for fuel, they would have to. Okay, so I'm playing what if here, all right?
I think it also sort of paints a picture as to how much is going to come up against them. But they actually used that for 7 years, the whole nation, which is
Ridiculous.
a ridiculous amount.
Yeah, absolutely. This is going to be a massive battle. They will plunder those who plundered them and rob those who robbed them, says Adonai Elohim. What does that remind you of?
Egypt.
Did Egypt really plunder Israel?
That's right.
Israel left with all Egypt stuff.
Yeah, they plundered, but Israel never really plundered. I mean, Egypt never really plundered the sons of Jacob, really, because they weren't paid properly, so we could see as a restitution for wages. Right? They plundered Egypt, absolutely, but now we're looking at them plundering those who have plundered them.
Maybe it's with the Crusaders.
Crusades was about freeing the Holy Land. It wasn't really, well, it became about tracts of land and things like that, but not
When
as
they
much.
lost the temple, they lost the menorah and stuff. When was that?
When the Romans came in,
The
they
Romans.
re-leveled the temple and they stole everything and left. Basically, this is land.
Okay, it's a possibility, because we know we know from historical documents, the menorah that they had in the Second Temple period, the temple, they used that to fund the Colosseum. You guys see how big the Colosseum is? Google.
Except for the fact that it's not exactly what it used to be.
Yeah, but even now people go there and it's massive. Think of it as a massive stadium. Think of like a,
I think there's only like 50 like people or something.
it's ginormous. This thing's got caverns underneath. It's this whole complex, and we have that. We have Titus's Arch, which is also funded by it. The point is there was such an amount of wealth that was plundered out of the temple that they funded Rome with the amount of money they brought out. Okay?
Could this link to Daniel where he was interpreting the dream, where it was Rome-like and then a rock came from the mountain and like destroyed
It's
it Rome?
possible, but then we're looking at this coalition that might come against them.
It's Jeremiah 30,
Yeah.
where it says in verse 16, "But all who devour you will be devoured, all your enemies will go into exile, those who plunder you will be plundered, those who pillage you will be pillaged."
So that's a promise, right? But
Yeah.
I'm thinking, is there anything previously that might have happened that we can see a Messiah type in? It's an indirect thing. Any takers?
Did you repeat the question?
If you already got a Sodom and Gomorrah judgment here, is it possible that when Lot was taken, remember,
Yeah.
what happened?
Abraham was the two people.
What happened to Lot first?
He went into him and all of, where do I start? Abraham's shepherds and his shepherds were arguing, so they
No,
split.
fast forward.
He got dragged out.
At the
He asked to go to
Genesis.
sit instead of the gates.
Before that, I mean, when you look at Sodom and Gomorrah, before he settled in Sodom and Gomorrah, he was settled in the region of Sodom and Gomorrah, right? But there were 4 kings from the north who came up against 5 kings from the south. And when they came up, they took all of everything and they went up and they plundered the entire land, Lot included, right? And they went up. Who went after him? Abraham, and him with his 300 and so manservants went up and they beat the snot out of the 4 kings who just defeated 5 kings, 5 kingdoms. And he brought back everything, and on his way down, who did he meet? Okay, so is it a possibility that maybe that's something that when we're looking at this sort of battle coming down, this coalition coming down, and the one man Israel sort of coming up and rescuing those around them, it's a possibility. Okay, but they're going to come up and he's going to reclaim everything that was lost, including people. All right, it's an idea. We test as we go, right? I'm on verse 11, it must be. When that day comes, I will give Gog a place there in Israel for graves, the travelers' valley east of the sea. So, okay, when that day comes, I will give Gog a place in Israel for graves. So we need to block out a whole area for all the dead bodies. East of the sea, it will block the travelers' passage. They will bury Gog and all his lords. So, okay, let's get this right. There was a massive bird-feeding frenzy, and yet Israel is still going up to bury the remains of what they found. Okay? They will rename the valley of Hammon, Gog, horde of Gog. They will rename it too, sorry. It will take the house of Israel 7 months to bury them. Okay, so another cycle of 7 months to bury them in order to cleanse the land. So we can look at that from a physical standpoint and we can look at that from a holiness standpoint. Dead things are unclean. That's why good Jewish people do what when they see a cemetery? They walk around it. They don't walk through it. Okay? When you look at, again, Second Temple period, when you come down the Mount of Olives, there is an ancient cemetery on the one side. You would go around the cemetery and up through the gate. Okay? And there's one of the Hallel Psalms that when you sing as you're going into Jerusalem, that's why it's called the Hallel Psalm, Hallelujah, when you read it. You get there and you remember the patriarchs, you remember the people that have gone before you. So it's a very practical thing. Okay? Yes, all the people of the land will be burying them. They will become famous for it, famous for burying people. It will be a day for me to be glorified, says Adonai Elohim. They will pick men for the continual duty of going through the land and burying with the travelers the corpses still lying out on the ground in order to cleanse it. They will begin their search after the 7 months. So after everybody buries everything, and then they will have a dedicated group for looking for pieces. All right. Now this is a rather interesting sort of reverse of the Valley of Dry Bones, don't you think? Israel coming to life, anybody who comes up to Israel to death. As they go through the land, if someone sees a human bone, he will put a marker next to it until the grave diggers have buried it in the valley of Hamon Gog. Do you have any other translation? No? Everybody happy? Everybody the same? Okay. Why would I put a marker next to a bone and wait for someone else to come and dig it?
You know,
So some people have the theory that if this is a nuclear fallout, you're not exactly going to want to touch it because it's radiation poisoning.
Absolutely.
And that these guys are going to be set apart, so they have these suits that can walk around and essentially nothing happens.
And that'll
And the
be
land is defiled because of the nuclear.
right. So as they collect, it's a possibility. We don't know if this is exactly going to be the case, but it's a possibility. Or it's a case of we need a specific, there are so many bones and things like that, we need people to go out and do this.
the one thing I don't understand from this is that when there's a nuclear bomb that happens, it isn't 7 years, it's over a long period of time. You look at, there's still places that have happened like over 50 years ago that are still not ready for you to even go through the cycle.
Like you're looking at like the,
They said it's 100 years before you can go back.
yeah, if you're looking at like a Chernobyl scenario, but that's a nuclear reactor. But remember, you might be talking about a lot smarter bombs today. So we don't exactly know the atomic weaponry that people do have today, and what sort of devastation, how smart it really is, how much radiation it's going to cause, because the ones that they test are kind of like, they do it in the Bahamas and those sort of things. So I wouldn't pretend to know that this is going to be 100% right.
Might also be technology in the future that suppresses the radiation.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, if it's a place of plunder and you're going to go and destroy it, right? Then you don't want the land to be contaminated, so you can't go ahead and get the plunder for 100 years.
Might be biological.
Could they
It might be a biological weapon.
Could they be
Absolutely.
using the oil from what they found for the burning of, I don't know, could they somehow
Which
use
could
that
be a
oil to
possible, no, which could be a, you don't burn oil, you use it to make diesel and petrol and things like that. You'll be wasting your money if you're just burning it. They only burn the nonsense stuff, you want to use it for production so that you can get the money. But it's interesting to think that if this happened, if it is biological, if it is this sort of thing that's going to get taken place, notice it would be the people probably in Israel launching against the people, Gog and Magog, in their own land to claim it back. Right?
I think with this specific verse where they worried about the human bones, I see that in the beginning, like we saw, that there was so many people coming up to attack that they've all just perished.
Mhm.
And it takes the whole of Israel to bury them, because that's how much it is.
Yeah.
But then that comes in with the issue of, okay, you touch a dead body, you're unclean for 7 days.
Yeah.
Which is why they probably, from a practical point of view, organized special people to just do that.
Which is a priestly understanding of things, right? Because we need to remember that Ezekiel is seeing things from a priestly perspective. We can't have God Israel if we're being unclean, right? So we will set people apart to be able to do this job.
But initially, the whole land buries them.
That's what he's saying.
7 years, yeah.
But you will be unclean for a small time period, right? But when it comes in thereafter, a dedicated group of people. And in Israel today, you actually have guys. I know it's a bit of a grim thing to discuss, but you have people that extremely devout Jewish people, that if there is a a bombing or something like that, and they have to find pieces. They will sit there and they will find as much as possible before they perform burial. And that's their job, finding the pieces and the bones and everything that they can identify and putting everything back together, just so that you can give them a proper burial. So it's an interesting thing from a priestly perspective. It is a possibility that this is a modern warfare problem. And it is also a thing of the spiritual perspective of the entire land is now soaked with the blood of the enemy. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Yeah, that's a whole bunch of unkosher from a spiritual perspective. How then do we cleanse the land? How are we going to atone? How is this all going to come together? And we have God doing what he needs to do, getting rid of the bones, making sure everybody is buried, setting it apart so that everybody can carry on as normal, right?
Especially since it's a temple, it's just about.
Yeah, since from chapter 40 to chapter 48, the rest of the book is all about this vision of this temple that's supposed to come, okay? So, yeah, you'll put a marker next to it, verse 16, moreover, Hamonah, its lord or its multitude will be the name of the city, thus they will cleanse the land, okay? As for you, human, Adonai Elohim says that you are to speak to all kinds of birds and every wild animal as follows. Assemble yourselves, come gather yourselves from all around for the sacrifice I'm preparing for you, a great sacrifice on the mountains of Israel, where you can eat flesh and drink blood. Here we have this bird imagery again. So he starts in the beginning with it and he finishes it up. You will eat the flesh of heroes and drink the blood of earth's princes. Earth, right? So he's making an illusion here that this is quite a big chunk of people coming up again. Rams, lambs, goats, bulls fattened in Bashan, all of them. Are we talking about rams, lambs, goats, and bulls? No. What are we talking about? Right, hierarchy. Okay, remember when he refers to the cows of Bashan, he was actually talking about people in many cases, not just the cows. Right? He uses the cows to give an illustration that the people have grown fat and they've become complacent and they kick and they don't want God anymore because life is so good. Okay? It says, all of them, you will eat fat till you are gorged and drink blood till you are drunk at the sacrifice I have prepared for you. At my table you will be satiated with horses, horsemen, heroes, every kind of warrior, says Adonai Elohim. Thus I will display my glory among the nations, so that all the nations will see my judgment when I execute it, and my hand when I lay it on them. From that day on, the house of Israel will know that I am Hashem their God, while the nations will know that the house of Israel went into exile because of their guilt, because they broke faith with me, so that I hid my face from them and handed them over to their adversaries, and they fell by the sword, all of them. Yes, I treated them as their uncleanliness and crimes deserved. I hid my face from them. There's an interesting picture. He says, when you see the hills and the destruction and all of this death lying around you, this is what I see from a spiritual standpoint of what you were giving me. Right? Remember, when you look at these plagues, for instance, like the boils, right? From a spiritual perspective of being unclean, this is what God saw. When you were in darkness, from a spiritual perspective, this is it. You thought you saw light, but you were just, there was just nothing there. Okay? Where am I? Verse 21. 25, 27, 42, 18, 25.
But it was also very, it's almost like it's a changeover, because now he's talking about them being back in exile, and then he's going to gather them.
And I said, when they were gathered, they would have seen because of their exile. This is what I did. I hid my face from them. Now he's revealing his face. So through this battle, he's going to reveal himself again. And it's again, God versus God.
Is he talking about the ones that are still in exile?
Yeah, he says, I will display my glory among the nations, so that all the nations will see judgment when I execute it with my hand and lay it on them. From that day on, the house of Israel will know that I am Hashem, I am Yehovah their God. While the nations will know that the house of Israel went into exile because of their guilt. Past tense.
Past tense.
Because they broke faith with me, so that I hid my face from them and handed them over to their adversaries, and they fell by the sword, all of them. Yes, I treated them as their uncleanliness and their crimes deserved, and I hid my face from them. So the reason they were out in the diaspora, here's an interesting thing. If everybody has been regathered, all the Jews are back home, how is he going to get them all there? Think about it. How many Jewish people do we have in South Africa? A little, 5, 10, 15, 25? Yeah,
Couple, yeah.
we've got quite a few. Okay, what about the Jews in America?
Even more.
Even more. What about some of the Jews in Europe? It's becoming less and less now because of what?
Anti-Semitism.
Right. It's amazing that God is using anti-Semitism to try and get the people back into the land. I know it sounds strange, but think about it. If you're so comfortable and you're so happy, you don't want to go home because you're earning pounds and you're earning dollars and you're living a much better life out in a different nation than you would be living in Israel. Because living in Israel is quite tough. Most people work 2 jobs to get ends meet. Now you have to go from your house, you're living in luxury, you go over there. You know, there's no real middle income bracket. Your street sweepers are earning almost the same as optometrists. It's only the super wealthy, which are the landowners at the moment. They are the guys that are holding most of the money, and they're keeping it very tightly knit, keeping the money in the family. Why would I go there if I can visit? If I'm earning dollars, if I'm earning pounds, I can go there, I can live 5-star, I can come back after 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or I can go up 3 times a year, I'm having a good life. I don't have to deal with their politics, I don't have to deal with their wars, I don't have to deal with the anti-Semitism, I don't have to deal with the Arabs, I don't have to deal with this, I don't have to deal with that. We know there's going to be war. Who needs Gaza shooting rockets at you every 5 minutes? I'm fine.
Bomb shelters.
Stay in Mississippi, stay in LA, stay wherever, and you're happy, stay in Paris. And now in Europe, they decided maybe it's not such a good idea because if you wear a hat, you get accosted by whether they're Arabs or whether they're French. It's not safe to be Jewish there anymore.
I've actually seen tweets of people saying they've had enough and they're going to Israel.
That's it, and they're leaving. And who knows, maybe it's going to get to the time where the states are going to do the same. South Africa is not on a massive good footing with Israel. We've just downgraded our embassy there. You know, we demand things and we get duped into things. People aren't paying attention to this idea that Israel is an apartheid state when people have never been there and they don't even understand what Israel is about. Just to calm you, I've been there a few times. It's definitely not an apartheid state. Whether you're Arab, whether you're woman, whether you're Muslim, whether you're Christian, whether whatever, you have the right to vote. You have free will. You have choices. You can go wherever. The only sort of separation we have is that there are sections in Israel that no Israeli citizen is allowed to go in his own country. As an Israeli citizen, you cannot go into places under Arab control. And there are certain sections where they will tolerate you, but they don't really like you. So you can go to the Cave of the Patriarchs in Hebron. You will see a lot of army guys there. Every 10 meters there's a 20-year-old with a big gun, and he's very nervous. And they're watching very carefully because their life's on the line every time they stand there. It's their country, and they're afraid to live there because they say that other people say they're not welcome, that they shouldn't be there, that they've taken the land away from other people. In this country, we call it Palestine. As a matter of interest, how many of you know where the term Palestine came from? From the Romans. So if they call themselves Palestinians, technically they should say they are Roman, but they're not, right? There was territory after territory that went through their hands. There was a time when they were under Arab control, but the Crusaders also fought there and took land back and moved back, and it was just back and forth, and then it was the Ottomans, and then it became the Brits, and the Brits gave it back. And then they had to fight for it again. If you look at Palestinian history textbooks or Palestinian atlases, Israel does not exist on the map. It says Palestine. Satan has been working over time, pushing an agenda to say that Israelis do not belong in Israel. And to the point where even archaeological evidence has been destroyed that we know of, to give any sort of notification that there's any sort of history in Israel. The problem is when you dig in Israel, you're very hard pressed to find. I mean, we're finding things in David City, King David, 3000 BC, right? No, I lied, sorry, 1000 BC, 1000 BC. We're finding evidence in David City, we're finding seals of, and letters and Dead Sea Scrolls, and in the Essene community down south, we're finding evidence everywhere that tell us that Israel, the Jewish state, has been before it, right?
Even
And-
Egyptian chronology has been moved out, so there's been a lot.
Yeah,
If you move it back, it lines up 100%.
they're trying everything. Us Satan is trying everything. But anyway, okay.
Sorry, Vince, I've also read somewhere some time ago that there's actually emissaries that are being sent out from Israel, rabbis, actually strictly speaking, going into nations and educating the Jewish communities
Hmm.
and assisting them and helping them to understand that they need to get back.
Well, there's a massive movement. If you want to make, they call it making aliyah. Making aliyah means to go up, right? So come back home, go up to Israel, go ascend to where God said that He would be for you. You go there now, you go to an aliyah conference. Before you even leave here, they will find you a job, they will get you an apartment, they will give you a driver's license, they will get you a medical aid, they will get your ID documents and a bank account open here before you even land. They sponsor everything. The government is trying to get the people up, but the problem is, as much as they're importing them, they're exporting them as well. Because the economy is, although building and growing, is not sustaining the guys. So they're stuck in an interesting dilemma. They know they need to get them back, but they don't know what to do with them when they have them. All right, let's get back into this. Verse 25, therefore Adonai Elohim says this, I will restore the fortunes of Yaakov and have compassion on the entire house of Israel. Jacob and Israel. Which covenant?
Peace.
In Sinai, right? Right? I will be jealous for my holy name. They will bear their shame and their guilt from breaking faith with me. Once they are living securely in the land with no one to make them afraid, this will be after I have brought them back from the peoples and gathered them out of the enemy's lands, therefore being consecrated through them in the sight of many nations. Then they will know that I am Hashem their God, since it was I who caused them to go into exile among the nations, and it was I who regathered them to their own land. I will leave none of them there anymore, and I will no longer hide my face from them, for I have poured out my spirit on the house of Israel, says Adonai. Okay, so once His spirit is in, so if we can understand that 37 leads to 38, it leads to 39, and 40 goes into a temple, and if it's talking about new covenant and establishments, can we look back in history and say that this has happened? Not in its fullness, right? So this is something where we look at the sticks coming together, the nation getting put back together. That's something we get to look forward to.
So has there ever been a time in history where they've been able to live off for 7 years?
War. Not since the nation has been put back together now in 1948, none of that. The thing is, Israel is only now living securely. Then, not even. Okay, so Revelations. Okay. Let's read from Revelations 19 and then we will frame Gog and Magog. Okay? So like I said before, the Revelations 19 has a very distinct ring to it. So if we give a little bit of context, we see a great millstone rolled into the sea. Babel is being destroyed. And then we go into verse 9 or 19, verse 1. After these things, I heard what sounded like the roar of a huge crowd in heaven, shouting, Hallelujah, the victory, the glory of the power of our God. For his judgments are true and just. He has judged the great whore, which is Babylon, who corrupted the earth with her whoring. He has taken vengeance on her, who has the blood of his servants on their hands. And the second time they said, Hallelujah, her smoke is up forever and ever. So the destruction of Babylon is being celebrated in Israel. While we're there, when you look at this, when you look at Babylon, what are you looking for? How are we going to identify it?
I think was it a lion?
What?
The sign of Babylon.
You think of the mark of the beast?
No, they had a, what they put up on the banners and stuff.
Banners was a lion.
Was it a lion?
The lion was right.
Yeah, a lion.
Usually they're going to stick up a banner and go, welcome to Babylon.
Maybe.
Probably not. Right? Babylon is either, in many aspects, when you look at this, it's a city, because the merchants in that will be moaning because they go and trade there. It's a place of wealth. Okay? It is also probably a spiritual or a world system. It's interesting when you look at the mark of the beast and things like that, when it said, will either be on your arm or on your forehead, that should immediately remind you of Tephanim. And when it says you will not be able to buy or sell without it, that should immediately remind you of Shabbat. So that's now something that is a copy that is going to push you away from Shabbat and maybe from hearing and thinking about God's word and loving God with all your heart. Maybe because of the money and all the rest of it. Probably a physical place, but as well as a spiritual one. It says in the second verse, they said, Hallelujah, our smoke is up forever and ever. Verse 4, the 24 elders and the living beings have fell down and they worship God sitting on the throne, and they said, Amen, Hallelujah. A voice went up from the throne saying, Praise our God, all you servants who fear him, small and great. Then I heard what sounded like the roar of a huge crowd, like the sound of rushing waters, like peals of thunder, saying, Hallelujah. Yehovah, Hashem, God of heaven's armies, has begun his reign. Let us rejoice and be glad. You see, something is happening in heaven, and they're saying the rain is happening. Babylon has been destroyed. He's not on earth yet. So the rain starts up in heaven, and then things get manifested on the ground. Let us rejoice and be glad. Let us give him the glory, for the time has come for the wedding of the Lamb. And his bride has prepared herself, fine linen, bright, clean, has given her to wear. So, when we look at this, an interesting parallel between two feasts. The first one we see is the wedding of the Lamb. Where's the wedding of the Lamb supposed to take place? No, not which feast, where. Okay, we're supposed to be called up to the clouds with him, right? So we can say we're up in the clouds for a time, okay? Around that time, yeah. The angel said to me, Write, how blessed are those who have been invited to the wedding feast of the Lamb. We start to have these things. We have the groom, we have the bride, and we have the guests. Who, where, and what fits in. The groom's the easiest one to identify. Is that Yeshua? The bride, is it just the church?
Is it one that is picked for Shabbat?
So
Shema Yeshua, so listen to end of day, please.
So we have one indication where we have, because Paul talks about them saying that as a father, he wants to present a spotless bride. And he taught the people to keep Torah, so it's a possibility. The church will say that's all you need is faith, and then you'll be included. All right? So whether or not you're Torah observant or not, or whether you're a church, okay, I put both in there. You have to teach people, and who are the guests? People who really wanted to be there but are not the bride.
But
Look at
wouldn't
the parable
they
that's all
all be-
broken people and homeless people,
Okay, so
and
those,
sick people.
those who wanted to be gathered into the kingdom, because those who didn't go in. So in essence, in that parable, it's the nations actually.
Yeah, that's pretty
It's the nations who understood Yeshua at the end of it, or we could say, if we believe that it's Torah observant, believe in Israel, because you have to be spotless without blemish. If you sin, you blemish, right? And then it's possible the church could be part of the guests. Okay, I'm not trying to solve that for you. I'm not trying to get into it too much. Otherwise, we'll be here until next week. But just to get you thinking about it, okay? So says, okay, it's given to wear fine linen means of righteous deeds of God's people. Righteous deeds follow Torah. Righteousness comes from faith. Faith leads to obedience. Obedience leads us to covering. The angel said to me, "Write, how blessed are those who have been invited to the wedding feast of the Lamb." Then added, "These are God's very words." I fell at his feet to worship him, but he said, "Don't do that. I'm only a fellow servant with you and your brothers who have the testimony of Yeshua." So an angel goes in, he says, "Worship God, for the testimony of Yeshua is the spirit of prophecy." What is a testimony? Is it? What's a testament? Well, we have a will and testament, and we have Old and New Testament. Old and New? Absolutely, it's Old and New Covenant. That's where we get the word testament from. Or we can also take this to the Revelations 5 principle that it's a will. All right? But it is written by the Spirit and it was already prophesied. Right? If we go to Old and New Covenant, we know both Old and Renewed Covenants were written by the Ruach.
So if you said there for the will of Yeshua is spirit of prophecy, then
Right? So it's about inheritance, it's about covenant. It actually falls both brackets. Next, I saw heaven open, and there before me on a white horse, sitting on it was one called Faithful and True, and it is in righteousness that he passes judgment and goes to battle. Okay, hang on a second. Babylon's destroyed, now he's going to battle. His eyes were like fiery flame, and on his head were many royal crowns, and he had his name written that no one knew but himself. He was wearing a robe that had been soaked in blood, and with the name with it was called the Word of God. Who's the Word of God? Right? The armies of heaven, clothed in fine linen, white and pure, were following him on white horses, and out of their mouth comes a sharp sword, which is to strike down the nations. He will rule them with the staff of iron. Okay, Psalm 2 is going to give you again, let's talk about Yeshua. It is he who treads the winepress from which flows the wine of his furious rage of Hashem. God's heavens armies, on his robe, on his thigh, his name was written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. All right? Just there quickly, you've got people that saying, oh yes, we can see Yeshua's thigh. Remember biblically, would he show that much flesh? No, not at all. So it's either on the hem of his garment as a signet, as a seal, or possibly that he's got a tzitzit that is attached on his cloak.
Makes
Okay?
sense though, because if he's sitting on a horse and he's wearing the clothes that they would have worn at the time, it would have been up here with the tzitzit up here. Anyway.
Right. Okay. So then I saw the angel standing in the sun, and he cried out to a loud voice to all the birds that fly around the mid-heaven. Come, gather together for the great feast God is giving, to eat the flesh of the kings, the flesh of the generals, the flesh of important men, the bulls, the cows, or the bulls or the cows, the goats, the sheep, or the flesh of horses and their riders, the flesh of all kinds of people, free and slave, small and great. I saw the beast and the king of the earth and their armies gathered together to do battle with the rider of the horse and his army. But the beast was taken captive, and with it the false prophet in its presence had done miracles when he used to deceive those who had the mark of the beast and those who had worshipped his image. The beast And so the beast and the false prophet were both thrown alive into the lake of fire that burns with sulfur. Sulfur again, Sodom and Gomorrah, right? The rest were killed with a sword that goes out of the mouth of the rider on the horse, and the birds gorged themselves on their flesh. Okay, so before he comes down, at the start of what we call the millennial reign, 1,000 years, everybody sort of agree what I'm talking about. He's going to live and reign for 1,000 years, right? We have a destruction and a feast. Right? Everybody agree that's before he's on earth. Okay? Which feast? To the birds. Right? Here, at the beginning of it. Okay? And we know that that's going to take place more or less at the same time. We have the second feast. The wedding feast. Nachon? Everybody happy? Okay. So this is going to happen, and this time period, just before the 1,000 years, there's going to be a destruction. And when did we know that this was going to happen? Does that parallel with anything we read? Was chapter 39. Okay? Listen to what chapter 20 says. Next, I saw an angel coming down from heaven. When we had the key to the abyss and a great chain in his hand, he seized the dragon, the ancient serpent, who is the devil and Satan, the adversary, and chained him up for 1,000 years. So again, in the beginning of millennial reign. And he threw him into the abyss, locked it, and sealed it over them so that he could not deceive the nations anymore until the 1,000 years were over. After that, he was to be set free for a little while. I saw the thrones and those seated on them who received authority to judge, and I saw the souls of those who had been beheaded for testifying about Yeshua and proclaiming the word of God. So people that have been martyred, right? Up, where are they? They're in heaven, okay? Also those who had not worshipped the beast or its image, who had not received the mark on their foreheads and on their hands. So we saw people that were martyred and other people. They came to life and ruled with the Messiah for 1,000 years.
Sorry, just let me pause there. So if you take a look, the same martyrdom, so the guys that have been beheaded are pretty much on the same level as those guys that haven't taken the mark of the beast.
What is
So it
basically
shows you what they're going to be going through if you don't take it. It's going to be.
Remember at the time of when this letter was written, when you look at the 7 churches, there was Polycarp of Smyrna, where they said in Smyrna, 2,000 believers were put to death in a single day. One day. Right? Renounce your faith. Renounce your faith. Renounce your faith. That's what it's all about. Don't believe in the Yeshua guy. They kept to it. Some were beheaded. Some refused the mark and they died, whether it was before the mark came in or after the mark came in, I don't know, textually it's difficult to prove either way, but this happened at the beginning. We come to life at the end of 1,000, when we start at 1,000 years. 1 Thessalonians 4 talks about the dead in Christ when we rest first. Okay? So we're sitting sort of here in between it, giving like a very gray area. This is the first resurrection. Blessed and holy is anyone who is part of the first resurrection. Over him the second death has no power. On contrary, they will be kohanim of God and they will and of the Messiah, and they will rule with him for 1,000 years. So they will act like priests, right? When the 1,000 years are over, the adversary will be set free from his prison, and they will go in to deceive the nations in the 4 corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them for battle. Their number is countless as the sand of the seashore. Okay? So, now I want you to listen to this description of Gog and Magog. And does it sound like Ezekiel 38? So first of all, it's all the nations, it's not just some nations. And they came up over the breadth of the land and surrounded the camp of God's people and the city he loves, Jerusalem. Where was the other war fought? In the agricultural lands, probably Megiddo side, right? But fire came down from heaven and consumed them. Okay, that's kind of similar. The adversary who had deceived them was hurled into the lake of fire and sulfur with the beast and the false prophet were, and they were tormented day and night forever and ever. But he only gets let out when? At the end of 1,000 years. So we have a feasting things here, and we've got Hasatan's army here, made up of all nations, a counterfeit again, like the sands of the seashore. Remember, we saw that counterfeit was Joshua. Okay, so it's a mock Israel coming up against them after he has been released. Okay, next I saw on a great white throne one Next I saw a great white throne and the one sitting on it. Earth and heaven fled from his presence, and no place was found for them. And I saw the dead, both great and small, standing in front of the throne. Okay? Books were opened, and another book was opened, the book of life, and the dead were judged that was written in the books according to what they have done. The sea gave up the dead, death and Sheol gave up the dead in them, and they were judged according to what they have done. Then death and Sheol were hurled into the lake of fire, and the second death, the lake of fire. Anyone else whose name was found written in the book of life was hurled into the lake of fire. So they're going to come up, and God's going to send a lightning bolt or sulfur, and there's going to be destruction, and that's going to be the end, and God's kingdom is going to be fully established here. From that great destruction, we are going to see the white throne judgment. Okay, theologians call it the great white throne judgment, right? This is the second resurrection, and if you want, possibly a third. Okay, does it talk about them gathering? Does it talk about uncleanliness? Does it talk about God not dwelling with them? Sounds very, very different. Yes? Okay, so here in chapter 38 and 39, we have a Gog and Magog at the beginning of 1,000 years. And when he's still coming to establish his kingdom, he reigns for 1,000 years. Hasatan is get released, and then all the nations come up for a second Gog and Magog.
Because at the end of the white throne judgment, the new city, new heaven, new earth,
Yeah, complete.
which doesn't even have a temple. But Ezekiel speaks of a temple. So you can't have that temple then with the Gog and Magog on this side. It must be then, which is why he's saying it's split.
Has to be. Right? The descriptions are completely different. Here we have them digging up bodies, burying bodies. Here we see fire done. God says, it's finished.
But we see that with Egypt, they were never the same again, right? So now, Gog and Magog, are they, because we
You
can't
see
find
that?
someone who's a pure Egyptian.
I think it's a spiritual picture.
So how did they survive this?
Egypt did rise up again.
Yeah, they did.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
They
I
actually,
thought that there was a mix of.
they became a mass superpower. It was only after Ptolemy took place, and that was after Alexander the Great. Remember, this Gog and Magog is a picture of that rebellion with Korah. Rebellion with Korah. It is a son that will come up, Reuben, and will come up against the anointed of God. The anointed? Who's the anointed one? Who's the new high priest? Yeshua. And he's going to come up and he's going to push his agenda and he's going to say, well, I can't really displace Yeshua. So what am I going to do? I'm going to attack his people. I'm going to try and destroy them. I'm going to try them to turn away from him. I'm going to gather support to his side. So when we look at Gog and Magog, we need to understand that you're probably talking about two different wars, not one.
So I'm going to check. So if you take a look, stand to correct, I think it's in Isaiah, the fall of Satan from heaven to earth, right?
Yeah.
Where he took a third of the angels, and it was the same thing. He wanted to be like God.
Revelations 12.
Now, it looks like it's happening there again, but now on earth instead of heaven, where he can't take Yeshua's throne, but he's saying, I'm going to take all these people from him. It just seems like history repeats itself.
That's the thing.
And if you take a look there, it means exactly the same thing.
It's a cyclical prophecy. Here we see rebellion at the beginning of God's reign. So we have guys that are saying, in the midst of just before and when this 1,000-year reign begins, there's going to be a war against Israel. And then after the 1,000 years, there's going to be another war. Both incited by Hasatan, both powered by Hasatan, but one's going to be his end destruction. With this one, remember, who was it that was destroyed?
The kings and the
The kings and all the rest of it, and which we read in Revelation 19.
The false prophet and
The beast was taken captive, and with it the false prophet in whose presence had done the miracles and things like that. So again, we're looking at the Antichrist and those guys being around the side. Okay, which would make sense because if we look at the tribulation period being laid out just before this, at the end of tribulation period, probably 1,000 years, right? Yeah. And these timelines are complicated. The problem with scripture is it's not nailing down the events as such, it's nailing down timeline within timeline. Okay, just like Daniel. Daniel gives you a timeline, and then he gives you another timeline to describe a point in a timeline. Then he gives you another timeline and another timeline to describe what's happening in that timeline, but it actually fits into the overall timeline. So you basically got graph upon graph upon graph, and now you've got to figure out which timeline fits into where and how it plays out. The problem is it's not always clear, and it's a history that gets played out again and again and again. So we've got to take these pictures, and we need to just be cognizant of the fact that when we look at this 1,000-year reign, it's literally flanked by two wars. When we're talking about Ezekiel and what was coming, is slightly different. It sounds completely different in the way the war is won, in the way things we don't read of this massive earthquake that's happening over there, and that's going to bring in this destruction, the hail, the fire. Those are all tribulation period stuff. So it sounds very different in the way these things are depicted.
what's the point of the war? The
last one at the end.
Well, because I know that, no, but for God, because I know that this one is to show that he is Hashem. But now the other one, because wouldn't they really know that in 1,000 years, because he is reigning, there's a Messiah.
Isn't it interesting that when Yeshua has been reigning for 1,000 years, if you look at Zechariah, read Zechariah 12, 13, and 14. In Zechariah 12, 13, and 14, you also hear about nations that refuse to come up to celebrate Sukkot in the time when he's reigning. So why then do we have rebellion in the midst of it? How can you not acknowledge that is Yeshua? Because man is man. What's going to happen is, well, why do we have to serve you? We've got the Tower of Babel mentality. If you don't submit to God, willingly lay down your life and submit to him, you're going to go, what do you think of God? Yeah, I am. No, whatever. Who made you king? The point is that I wasn't created, so, and you were. I was there when I made you. When are you not going to get the picture yet? And even in that point, man's rebellion goes right to the end. Did you notice something here? The lake of fire. Who was that made for first? Hasatan and the angels and the demonic forces, the Antichrist, those guys. It was made for them and everybody else who refused. Mm-hmm. So you have a choice. You've got the blood of the Lamb to cover you, or you get to follow Hasatan. This one is going to lead to the second death. Right? This one is going to lead to no death, eternal life. Everything is going to happen. There's no if, maybe, or but. It's when. And when it does, you need to be found. Either written in the book of life or not. Right? So it's...
Sorry.
No.
This side as well, it's interesting where people say, well, Satan is here, he makes us do things, blah, blah, blah. But even when he's locked up, that he can't have any influence in the world for 1,000 years, we still do what we want.
Absolutely.
We can see him and know him, and he can teach us, and we won't do all this. And then when Satan's released again, it's like, okay, now he's going to carry on for a short period to get their army together and do what he needs to do. So zap you done.
Exactly. You're sitting over there and you're thinking, man's inherent will to go against God. Mm-hmm. You need the love to change, right? You need to willingly submit. You need to choose life. And if you don't, you're going to be doomed.
How after that end, Satan will be released.
It says, it doesn't give you a specific time, it says for a short period. I think it's enough time for them to gather, and it's literally going to be a magnet. Right? He's going to go and he's going to go there and he's going to be like, guys, we need to get this guy out of power. Don't you think so? Yeah, come, let's go. And he's going to gather all of his minions again and he's going to bring them up and they're going to surround Jerusalem and God is going to go, really? And it's going to be done. So enough time to just do that, because his point is, that's it, I've given you enough opportunity, which is ridiculous if you think about it. After tribulation period, where you go through all those judgments and all the rest of it, if you live through that and you come out on the other side, you should be thinking, well, there's a God. Right? How did I live through that? You get through the other side and then you see him coming and reigning, and then you go, no, that's definitely not him. No, I'm good. And then for 1,000 years, he willingly trains you. And he goes, like it says in Zechariah, that the people who do not come from Sukkot come up to celebrate with him will receive no rain. Why didn't he just lightning bolt them? For 1,000 years, he's patient. And he uses us, if I understand scriptures correctly, if we rule and reign with him, and we come up, we will be teaching the nations about the feasts and Torah and things like that. And say, come on, guys, it's Sukkot time. Let's go up to the king. Bring everything. We're gonna go have a party. We're gonna build sukkahs, and we're gonna go sit there and dwell with him, and it's gonna be good. And we're gonna teach him up. And then you're still gonna get people that, no, you can keep your God in your king. It doesn't compute in my brain how we could still get to that place and say, no, I'm good. You know, it's really weird now, since all of that earth stuff, we get to live longer. I don't understand it. It's like, hello? Heaven is coming down.
And we're going to transform bodies, right? They're living corruptible at that stage.
It's going to be it's going to be in the fullness. It's, if I look at it correctly, it's for us and then for the rest of creation later.
Also, look, I mean, this is real left wing, right?
Yeah.
Do you think God's kind of giving Hasatan a chance to repent as well?
Absolutely.
I mean, if you take a look, he's had all these thousands of years already. Plus, he's got 1,000 years where he's locked up kind of in solitude. Maybe I should change my ways. And then he's like, okay, well, I'll give you a chance. And he still comes out and goes,
Absolutely.
Because he wants everybody to come in, right? He doesn't want, and he created Hasatan as that mirror for him, as a shining star. So,
no, I think that's a fun source. It's the same as Yeshua and Judas Iscariot. You're coming down to a time of Pesach where he gave, if you look at the way the seat, and we're going to go through this on Shabbat, that the seating arrangements in the triclinium, he gave 2 seats of honor, right? It's the host that sits, it's the first one is the guy who protects the host, right? And the one who reclined on Yeshua was John. Then it was Yeshua, and then who else could dip?
Jesus.
He's the guy that covers it. Knowing that he was going to betray him, he gave him a seat of honor. That's why Peter was so dick back, and he probably went to go sit at the other end of the table, because the only person he could talk to was John. Because if you're all reclining on your left-hand side, which was the custom, and someone's sitting on the left-hand side over there, I would have to look over there, and I have Peter in my eye line. And he talks to John.
Peter, I'm not leaning against anything.
No, you had people leaning against them. You know, they didn't have to stay in that position the whole time. It's, if I wanted to recline on there, I could lean against them, but at times they would roll over onto their tummies and they would have looks. But if you look at the eyeliner side, if they stayed in that reclining position, it was only John. Why did Yeshua ask Judas to sit there? Knowing that he was going to betray him, knowing that he was stealing from the common purse. If he knew he was stealing from the common purse, why give him the common purse?
Giving him opportunity to
Giving him space.
Every time it was about, I know your heart, you need to change. Let me help you change. And the problem is, our biggest problem is we don't want to acknowledge what our sin is.
Because even coming back to Egypt, he continuously gave Pharaoh the opportunity to repent and stop sinning. But he hardened his heart, and then eventually God said, okay, now harden your heart.
That's it. And again, his heart is that everybody, that not one lost should be, not one person created should be lost. Yeshua prays the same thing. And again, it's about his part is that he could save all creation. But free will, right? So he's going to say, here I am on the bridge, walk across the bridge and you'll be safe on the other side. And you're looking at that bridge going, no, I'll take my chances with the earthquake and the volcano behind me. There's going to be brokenness, there's going to be destruction. You're choosing to use him or not. It's a very sad thing that when you read through Revelations, as much as you see the power and the glory of Yeshua and Elohim and all this stuff being played out, and you're seeing heaven and the hosts and people safe, and these people rejoicing in heaven because they know time is coming, God is just and all the rest of it, and on earth all you hear is blasphemy, moaning, groaning, trying to take medication instead of turning from sin. And they all just say, look, I just want to get over this and then move on, and they don't want to look at their own sin. Guys, it's a wonderful thing to acknowledge where you're broken. If you're struggling with something, the first step is to say, Abba, this is me, I'm broken, I need help. He can, by the power of the Ruach HaKodesh, he can, spending time in his word, he can remold your mind, remold your heart, fix you and put you back together. But you need to acknowledge it. The first step is always taking your sacrifice up and saying, I am broken. I have sinned. It was me. It's not Hasatan. He's been locked away for 1,000 years. It's no one else. It's not that person who made me angry and then I kicked the dog. You kicked the dog, take ownership of what you did. Right? If you're struggling with something, give it up. And once it's out, then he can deal with you. That's your shortcoming. The problem is, even from Adam's time, cover up is what we do best. Right? I'm just wearing a couple of fig leaves. I wanted to feel pretty for you. Really?
It seems like it's becoming more prevalent lately because there's this whole victim mentality that's starting to well up across the world, where it's not my fault, it's everybody else, and I'm a victim because of this, that. There's no accountability, responsibility, reaction.
And if there was a God, why this?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's his fault.
You
It
know,
was Adam
my
would do
God
it.
would do it, so why?
Or Adam would say,
Yeah.
she did it.
She did.
That thing you gave me, that one,
No, I remember.
that one. It's your fault you gave me that one. If she wasn't around, it was like, but who was the oak sitting there pining because he couldn't find someone that looked like him? We don't want to take ownership of anything, really. It's really sad. But anyway,
It's amazing how David actually really got there when he eventually said, search my heart.
eventually,
Yeah.
yeah.
Search my heart and see if there's any. I mean, that's like that finding. Well, maybe I should change my ways.
Yeah. Right. For the rest of Ezekiel, okay, we're gonna have some fun ones. I said it tongue in cheek. Chapters 40 to 48 are literally dealing with Ezekiel's temple. All right. You are gonna be most likely bored out of your socks reading about cubits and gates and courts and an altar and a building dynamic. If you're not an architect, these are going to be very tedious chapters for you.
Jams and posts.
Yeah.
Lintels.
So what I'm gonna try and do, I've been working up ahead, and there have been a couple of guys that have done some artists sort of 3D representations of what they think it possibly could be like. So what we can do is we can maybe look at that. And then, because I'm a visual guy, I think it goes a lot further than us just reading 72 chapters about the tabernacle. I'd rather show you what the tabernacle looks like, put together in pieces, and then we can pull verses out and kind of break it up. Say, okay, well, in Ezekiel 43, it says this. Why do you think it says this? Which temple is this if we look at from Ezekiel's timeline? And this is one of the most interesting things, right? Because when you look at Ezekiel's temple, what was the next temple to be built? Where was Ezekiel?
He was in Babylon.
Babylon. So who came out of Babylon and built the next temple? Zerubbabel, right? And if Zerubbabel came out and built the temple, does that temple match up to Ezekiel's vision? Not even close. So we go, but Zerubbabel's temple, was Zerubbabel's temple ever destroyed, as in by invading army? No, Zerubbabel's temple was finished. But they broke it down and they created Herod's temple. So do yourself a favor and look up Herod's temple. And when you look up Herod's temple, does that sketch line up with Ezekiel's? Not even close. All right? Part of our problem is, in Ezekiel's time, it was physically impossible to build what Ezekiel envisioned. In Herod's time, who built the biggest temple platform in the world, remember, he built onto a mountain. He made the mountain bigger to fit the temple. Right? I'll go through that with you when we look at that construction. Compared to Ezekiel's temple, Herod's temple is like 1/4.
Like a kitchen.
Yeah, you walked into the outer court, except this. Now, to put that into perspective, Herod's temple is 144,000 square meters. 12,000 by 12,000. That's just the platform. And if you look at the description of Ezekiel's temple, times it by 4, and you might have something that could hold Ezekiel's vision. So now we get to ask the question, when is this temple being built? Who builds this temple? Right? Is it a millennial temple? Is it supposed to be built at all? Is it just a vision to teach them something else? And then we can go into all these funny little dilemmas, because with these verses come interesting questions, like the offering system. Because when we look at the temple that the Jews are getting to build now, it's still on Temple Mount, and it's probably roughly the same size as Herod's temple. So it's not Ezekiel's temple. So it can't be that temple.
Not just that, there's 2 princes that it talks about.
Things of prince
Further promotes the.
further adds interesting thing, but remember the term prince could be used for the anointed one, but also could be used for the president, or it could be the kohen, or it could be whatever. So we're gonna go a bit down in history. What I want to do is kind of whet your appetite a little bit. Go look at and do a comparative study. Tabernacle to Solomon's temple. From Solomon's temple, see, you're not going to find really much imagery with Zerubbabel's, but read about Zerubbabel's temple. It's actually quite sad. They cry a lot about it. And after Zerubbabel's temple, what do we see with Herod's? Once we have those platforms fastened in our brain, then we can go look into Ezekiel's temple and have. They're using Temple Mount. Remember, if you guys want to see the video, Temple Institute, templeinstitute.org, I think. When you go there, they show you. Look at what they're doing. Have a look. When we take tours over there, they've got a video of what it's going to look like. They've drawn up the plans. They're starting to gather the stuff. The clothing and the menorah, all that stuff's been there for donkeys. So there's going to be interesting little things that they're going to do. If they have a 3D model on the internet, it will be somewhere. But the layout of this next temple, this third temple, which we know the Antichrist is going to come and visit and claim to be God. How does that build fit with what Ezekiel sees? So we've got lots of interesting things. And at the end of it, we've got, like Nick said, at the end of Revelations, it says, God will come down and dwell in Jerusalem. The new Jerusalem will be there, and there will be no temple.
Yeah.
So it's not. So we don't have that temple at the end of this period. So where does this fit in? Was it possible when, and why is he talking about 8 full chapters of it if there is no importance? Yeah, it's something theologians have been arguing about for a very long time.
Then you take a look at Gog 2 chapters.
Exactly. Yeah, 8 chapters in Ezekiel.
It's very, very detailed.
Okay, then, Yeshua and Calvary.
Hmm?
Where will he record his speech?
In Jerusalem.
Jerusalem.
Yeah, so he's going to set himself up there. All right. Any other questions? Any thoughts?
I have a question, but I don't know if it's related to this thing. So,
Random sidetrack question.
in Exodus, when they got Moses to make the lampstand, and he says, "You will not ever again create the same thing," because Israel had already created a menorah, it meant that kind of wrong.
The menorah.
Yeah, the menorah.
No,
Not the lampstand like lights, the menorah, that one that's in the box, the globe.
That- that is for the next temple.
Yes, but God said in Exodus, don't make another menorah.
How many? You have to check context on this. Don't make a menorah for common use. Okay? Because Solomon did what?
Made too many.
He made 10.
Yes.
10 menorah, and we know the Shekinah still dwelt there.
Okay.
Right? So it's again, you get the menorah and then you get a menorah. So, say now for instance, you can go buy a menorah in Israel. Does it make it the menorah? No. What makes it the menorah is when you consecrate it and you put it in the temple. Now, if I took the temple menorah and put it in fellowship, I'm looking for trouble. Okay? That is when something consecrated and set apart for. It's like when we read about in Judges when we got the Kohen to come and do our sacrifices in our house. No. He is for the temple. Anything else is strange fire and problems. Okay?
It's an interesting thing, actual menorah is in the Mexican, and that they're gonna use it as the bargaining tool to get the Messiah into the temple. Wow.
That would be very interesting and they would be very grumpy because they spent $1 million creating that other one. That big menorah is not.
But that one's not pure gold, so.
They don't know how they could do a pure gold one that size.
I have a theory. Could they have used white gold instead of actual gold because white gold has a more sturdy weight?
Still not near strong enough to be able to hold that size.
Can they use white gold in the same thing, gold around it?
It's the gold in itself.
But where is there's a menorah and there's the one with it's got 9.
9.
Yeah,
That's called a Chanukia.
Hanukkah. What is that?
Chanukia is only used in the time of Hanukkah. Okay, now Hanukkah is celebrated over how many nights?
8.
8 nights, right? And then they use the central one, is just a shamash as the light that's always lit. So they sanctifying 8 nights, which is interesting because the dedication of the temple went over 8 nights.
Yes.
Well, it was 8 days. It was 7 days in for the priests, and on the 8th day they started. Which is interesting when you look at the Feast of Tabernacles. It's 8 days, right? That only gets used. They weren't trying to reinvent the menorah. It is a lampstand to remind you of a specific time of when tradition has it. The menorah stayed lit for 8 days, which was the time again it took for new olive oil to be pressed, so to keep the menorah being lit thereon forever, because it said it was a perpetual light. So the Chanukia has become a symbol of the menorah at the time of Hanukkah, but not a menorah. We get people that we get confused and they say, look, the Jewish people have lost the plot. They're making a different menorah. This one has 9 branches. It's nothing further from the truth. This is just a holiday thing. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Great time is happy time. Get straight up in there. All right, let's bow our heads. Father, we just thank you for your word. Father, we thank you for your love. I thank you for these people, Father, who have given up their time to come and hear from you. Father, I just pray that as we study your words, Lord Father, that you would reveal more and more to us, Lord Father. And as we tackle something that has baffled people for many a year, I pray that you just open up our eyes and our hearts, Lord Father, to help and understand this, Lord Father, because we just want to get closer to you. Father, that it would be your truth not our perceptions on what needs to happen, Lord Father, but we just thank you. We thank you that you would lead us through your Ruach, that you would open up our eyes and our hearts. Father, as I've spoken tonight, Lord Father, if there's any sin, Lord Father, we're holding on to, I just pray that you would just help us. Help us, Lord Father, because in many cases when we hold on to our sin, we get into a state of rebellion. We get stubborn, Father, because we want to prove a point. Abba, I just thank you that you would convict us and you would, in many cases, chastise us, Father, because the love of a Father would rebuke, train up, build up, Lord Father, when we're going wrong. Abba, I pray that we will be able to right the wrongs, bring in restitution we needed. And I pray, Lord Father, that you would bring in your will, Lord Father, fully help us rectify these wrongs, Lord Father. Help us get back to where we need to be, so that we may honor you and glorify your name. Your plans, Lord, and your ways, that we would not be a burden on anybody or anything, but we would be a blessing, as you have said, the head and not the tail. We give you glory in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
This is the blouse
I've got
job.
the cookie jar.